Earlier, I spoke to Josh Rogin about the ongoing crisis in Syria. He is a senior correspondent with the Daily Beast and an analyst on the Middle East.
We see an alignment of interest between the Syrian government, the Russians, the Iranians, and the United States, all with a common goal, which is to fight the extremists. All of a sudden, the international community, especially the West, finds itself more aligned with the regime than ever before in the 3 years of this war. And at the same time, the extremists are gaining ground, gaining power, and increasingly taking the fight to the regime. So what we're going to see is a protracted battle whereby the extremists and the Islamic Front wage a war on the regime and their Russian, Iranian, and also Western interests. And the West will see itself increasingly aligned with the regime in terms of protecting chemical weapons stores, protecting civilian populations, and pursuing a political process that will result in a conference in Geneva in January that will include Iran, Syria, the UN, Russia, and the United States, and almost nobody in the opposition who has any influence on the ground.
We look at the Arab Spring, and basically, if you were to map out a roadmap for the United States or the West, they would have said, well, this is great, all these things happening, but now as we look at what's happened in Egypt and Libya, and now what's happening in Syria, what's the takeaway for the West, I guess?
The takeaway for the West is that the future of the Arab Spring is not written, that all of these countries are going through transitions that will take decades, not years. And the level of involvement of the West in these transitions can have an impact. In those countries where the West has taken a more active role, such as in Libya, Tunisia, and to a lesser extent in Egypt, we've seen that influence have results. In other countries, such as Syria, where the West has taken a less active role, we've seen a lack of Western influence. So these countries are all gearing up for processes that will play out well for many, many, many years. And what the West has to do is they have to decide whether or not they want to play a role in these transitions. And if they do, that will take a commitment of time, resources, diplomacy, and national power. So far, the West, especially the Obama administration, has not made the decision to become an active part of that
And I guess
process.
continuity is also a thread that you don't always see because you see different administrations in play.
Not only do you see different administrations in play, each of these countries is different. Each of these countries requires a vastly different approach. And not only is there no overall U.S. Obama administration policy to deal with this transition, there's very little in the way of deciding what the American or Western role should be in each of these transitions. So in that vacuum, anything can happen. It creates risks, it creates uncertainty, and it creates the prospect of further deterioration into violence before things get any better.